Welcome to the Wednesday evening edition of The Money Show. As always, we bring you somebody who's changing the world, either to a lesser or greater degree, maybe just changing the lives of their own staff and their customers. Stephen Kark is the chief executive of a company called Paycorp. And it feels like a million years ago when I'd last chatted to Stephen Kark. He was in studio, and we were talking about why he was taking Paycorp private out of transaction capital at the time. And it's been a while. Time for a catch-up. So, Stephen Kark, I mean, you actually, I think, started this business even further back than that. There was, 1999 was the first business, the ATM Solutions business, which installed independent ATMs all over South Africa, right?
Well, firstly, good evening, Bruce. Good to chat to you. It has been about 1,000 years, 10 years ago to be exact. And if I recall, in that last meeting, you were fascinated as to A, why we were taking the business out of transaction capital, and B, the price that we paid. So that was sort of the context that I really enjoyed that talk. And let's just say that 10 years is a long time in the world of payments. A hell of a lot has happened since then. But this is a business that I started at the end of 1999, early 2000. And the first part of the payments adventure was really putting ATM machines in garage shops and convenience stores and supermarkets. And that was largely against the backdrop at that time of the big banks who were either unwilling or unable to really put ATM machines away from their own branches. So it was few and far between. If you needed an ATM, you invariably had to go to a branch. And, that, as I said, retail location ATMs were not a thing. And that was what we brought to South Africa, where we put machines into convenient locations and we gave merchants the opportunity to better service their customers and cardholders more access to their cash. And that was the start, ATM Solutions.
Imagine making banking and being able to access cash convenient, but the world has moved on. I mean, there are still very cash-dense economies, but more and more in developed economies, we're seeing people going digital, and of course, you've had to go digital. You launched after ATM Solutions a business called DrawCard, and then, I don't even know how to pronounce this, EFT POS, Electronic Funds Transfer Point of Sale, I suppose that stands for, in 2005. Were you looking at sort of diversification away from cash? Were you looking to create an integrated payments business even back then?
Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't so much a migration away from cash at that time. That ultimately became a theme. But after a pretty successful launch of ATM Solutions, and we went from 0 to nearly 5,000 ATM machines around the country, which made us the largest network, off-bank site network in the country. We literally blanketed the country from top to bottom, small towns, big towns, with ATM machines. We looked at our business very strategically in the the latter part of the early 2000s. And we said, look, we've got very good retail relationships. The retailers, they like us, they know us, they trust us. They were very good to us in the early years. We built a very large and sophisticated transaction processing infrastructure, not because we were so smart, just because we were processing literally hundreds of millions of ATM transactions. So we became, very low cost ability to process transactions, and a pretty good back office and risk management and all the plumbing that makes an ATM business work. So we looked at our business very strategically, and we said, look, how do you go from being a reasonably competent ATM deployer, an ATM company, into being more a payments business? And then we branched into those two separate areas. We thought that the big banks were doing a wonderful job of providing, speed point machines, POS machines in big retailers. If you're in Pick and Pay or Woolies, that was a great job that they were doing. But in small and medium-sized merchants, if you're Freddy's Shoe Shop or Steve's Pizzeria, you were being overcharged and underserviced. So we thought that was a great segue into independent point of sale, putting out point of sale machines. And then we saw the rise in the US, particularly of prepaid cards, not prepaid airtime cards, prepaid debit cards. And then we formed another company called DrawCard, and that business was one of the pioneer third-party card issuers in South Africa. We started originally with a gift card, And then we got a Visa sponsorship. We started issuing currency cards and loan disbursement cards and all different kinds of card products. So to answer your question, off the backbone of our ATM business, we diversified into other payment streams. Was that because we were looking to diversify away from cash? Probably not. We were not that prescient, but it did give us the raw material to move into other payments verticals.
Now, it's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, the world of payments, the stuff we take for granted because it just happens. You tap your card, swipe your card, stick your card into a machine, tap in a PIN number. Sometimes you don't. Now you tap your phone. Whatever the case is, we take it all for granted. And it's the architecture of what makes commerce possible that you've been instrumental in for more than 20 years now. You then sell it into Transaction Capital. And by 2012, I think it was, Actis, the private equity firm, and you as management team paid 937 million rand to take it out of Transaction Capital. And you've been, an independent business ever since?
Yeah, so the Actis adventure was very good. Actis, as you know, a big emerging market private equity shop. They loved the payments business. They owned a number of payments assets around the world, and they identified Paycorp as a good one. So them together with us as the management team bought it out of Transaction Capital. And Bruce, our strategic objectives were very clear and actually very simple, to be honest. The execution was a bit complicated, but the strategy was very simple. We thought we were going to build out value, real equity value, by doing only two things. Number one, internationalizing the business, and number two, diversifying somewhat into other payments verticals, into different verticals. So and we did pretty well over a 8-year period that Actis was involved with us. On the international front, we went into Eastern Europe. We thought that there were similar market characteristics in the ATM space in Eastern Europe. And I mean, just to digress for 30 seconds, we had a bit of experience operating ostensibly an international business in Namibia, where we still have today nearly 600 machines. We got a handful of people working there. Why? Because all the heavy lifting is done from our central infrastructure in Johannesburg. So we like that model where you can go into a market, you can deploy relatively light infrastructure, and you can do all the heavy lifting from South Africa. And that's scalable. That in our mind was scalable. So that was the international strategy that we pursued. We went into Eastern Europe. We got introduced to some fantastic entrepreneurs there. We landed up ultimately having a controlling stake in that business. And today we have ATMs, close on 12 or 1,300 machines in Hungary, Slovakia, Czech, Croatia, and the surround, all through Central and Eastern Europe. And we're looking at a couple of other markets there, again, with all the heavy lifting done from central infrastructure in Sandton. So very scalable and very profitable. So that was, if you like, international opportunity number one. And international opportunity number two is we made a pretty smart acquisition. We bought a company called Tutuka. We took a majority stake of that. Yes. We merged that with our draw card business, and we sold the Tutuka business just before COVID, which I'll talk about in a second. But just before we sold them, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, we were in 33 countries. We were issuing cards around the world, all processing from South Africa. So the trick is to be internationally outstanding while still being locally relevant. We like that.
Absolutely. And you've got a cost base in an environment which for many years, and hopefully it doesn't continue in perpetuity, you'll have a different view, of course, where a weakening currency environment has made you even more profitable as a result of where you've domiciled the costs.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, you don't only want to be a cost, you don't only want your leadership to come through cost benefit, but of course, having your central infrastructure in South Africa, which is a low-cost base, low-cost environment, it does help. But we have managed to remain current and relevant to the top end of technology. So there is nothing that people are doing anywhere around the world, if it's in ATM or transaction processing or otherwise, that we currently don't have either the expertise or currently doing it ourselves. The interesting thing about payments, why we like that as a business, and you alluded to it earlier, is any commercial transaction that takes place, the final step is always the payment. So our trick now today is to utilize our core payments infrastructure to assist either merchants, banks, cardholders to pay any way they like. So if they want to be paying in cash, if they want to be tapping and going, if they want to be providing a card, or if they want to be paying in crypto, that's, our kind of our strap line is pay your way, meaning pay any way you like. We don't want to be too prescriptive to say, well, this market is going cash light, this market is going crypto heavy, this is digital currency, this is card. We want to be a utilitarian provider of payment services off a low-cost base in South Africa.
We're talking to Stephen Kark, the Chief Executive of Paycorp. More with him in a moment. Welcome to the Money Show. Stephen Kark with us this evening, Chief Executive at Paycorp. And there are plenty of references, Stephen, to Transaction Capital's sale of Paycorp to Actis for 937 million rand. In those days, it was 10 rand to the dollar. Now it's twice that, of course. And you referred earlier to Actis exiting Paycorp. I think that's at least what you suggested. When did that transaction happen?
Actis were involved with us, Bruce, for about 6 years. As I said, the key strategy for what we believed would be value unlock would be to internationalize and to broaden our product scope, which we did both of those things reasonably well. And then towards the end of 2018, we were the last investment in their fund and they were looking to monetize. I thought it was a bit premature, but be that as it may, they did have a majority. So we went to exit at the end of that year. We ran a process. We actually got offers in for the entire group. We didn't think at values that we thought represented enough value. Actis would have done still absolutely fine. They made a very healthy return, but it was decided that the best way to extract value or maximum value would be to do a breakup and sale, piecemeal sale. Some of the potential purchasers said, look, I love the ATM business, but I hate the card business. I like the card business, but I hate the POS business, you name it. So we decided to do the breakup. The first asset that we sold was Tutuka, which was our card issuing business. We sold that in May of 2019. And then at the end of that year, we sold our point of sale, our merchant acquiring business. And during the intervening period when Actis was involved with us, we bought a fantastic business doing airtime, electricity, mobile top-up, lotto, remittance, putting these small terminals in informal retail. We grew that thing from a couple of thousand merchants to, I think, close on about 40,000 merchants when we sold. We also powered those devices to start accepting cards as cash became, less relevant. So we sold that business at the end of 2019. And then COVID happened. Actis, we sat tight during COVID. We were left with our big network of machines, nearly 7,000 machines in South Africa or sub-Saharan Africa and Europe. And COVID was tough. Stores were closed. Eastern Europe was closed. We were fortunate that our balance sheet was very strong as a result of these sales. But we popped out of the other end of COVID very strong, a talented management team. And Actis expressed interest in selling the last asset, our ATM business and our processing infrastructure. And then through a number of conversations, we decided that the best buyers for that group was us as a management team. So we bought it out again. So myself and my management team bought it back again, and we are now in growth mode. We bought back our network of machines, all of our processing infrastructure, and that was a little after 18 months ago, and it's been a hell of a thing since then. We've grown the business, we have retooled the business, repurposed it. We're in the UK, we're in a number of other countries. We have a very strong lending business, which lends to merchants through their point of sale device or through their ATM machine. We've moved quite aggressively into crypto. We let people cash money out of ATMs cardless if they've got a mobile wallet. And believe it or not, all during this time too, we made an application to the SARB for designation. That effectively puts us in the same status as a clearing bank, which they granted to us kindly over a year ago. So we are now principal members of Visa and MasterCard ourselves, which gives us enormous capabilities and optionality. So, if you think about the ATM business, perhaps if you think about the ATM business as, I don't know, white bread. Not everyone likes white bread and is going down in popularity. We don't see ourselves as being in the white bread business. We see ourselves as being in the bakery business. We have got, ovens and the supply chain and pastry chefs and whatever kinds of transactions we can plug into our environment. If it's card or point of sale or crypto or person-to-person payments or mobile, it runs through this central infrastructure. So our key is to take this core asset, which was developed in its embryo more than 20 odd years ago in the ATM business, and continue to build out our payments capabilities internationally.
Yeah. What did you learn in the private equity process? I remember asking Christo Visa, this was before Steinhoff, the week before Steinhoff, actually. And I just said to him, what was the biggest lesson you learned along the journey of creating this enormous empire of retail, effectively? And he just said, if you'd never been forced to list the business of ShopRite in 1985, or was it 86, during the crisis that was precipitated by the Rubicon speech, he would never have done so. But they needed to raise capital, and so he did so. I wonder if you've learned anything from the private equity process as to whether you would take the same decisions given what you know now and put into a similar position.
Well, life's a lot clearer through the rearview mirror than through the windshield, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But, our experience with private equity has been pretty good. We had Horizon Equity in the early days. We had Ethos and Actis more recently. We also were listed through Transaction Capital. So the positives from a private equity perspective is, of course, they give you capital. They also open certain doors, and there's definitely a skill set that they bring to you. Our business today, it's almost second nature to have a risk committee and an audit committee and all of the necessary stuff that you need by having professional owners. So there's no doubt that we are a much more professional shop as a result of having private equity owners. But Bruce, the truth is, I'm not sure I would do a private equity deal again easily. Certainly not private equity that comes from a closed-end fund, because, Capital needs to be patient. Invariably you buy too early, sell too late, sell too early, buy too late, who knows? And when you've got this artificial thing of a clock ticking in a private equity universe, it's weird. You're signing a divorce decree while you're still under the wedding canopy, which makes not a lot of sense. So private equity has been very good for us. We've had excellent partners. Actors were good partners. Ethos was good partners. Really fantastic. But in the next iteration of our journey, we would look, to the extent we need to raise funding, we'd do it more through permanent capital rather than something that's got a clock ticking. I just think it's somewhat short-sighted, invariably.
And you would have learned lessons looking at your friends from Transaction Capital, of course, in the last 2 years or so, as the wheels, when they come off quite spectacularly, publicly and loudly, and that becomes very distracting too for anybody who's trying to build a business.
Well, look, I like being private. The public light is not a forgiving friend. I'll tell you what. When it's running, everyone's your friend. When it's not, wow, friends are few. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. So, some valuable lessons learned. The valuation of the business, did you pay considerably more to take it out of private equity than they paid going in?
Suppose when you total it all up, when the original transaction that we had when we bought it out of Transaction Capital was at 937, correct? We made some acquisitions and we grew aggressively organically. So the check that Actors got out in totality, when you factor in all of the assets that we had bought and grew, they did fine. They did absolutely fine. So your skepticism around the entry price, I think I was probably ill-founded. They did absolutely fine. But the last transaction that in the final asset that we bought, It was okay. It was okay we paid probably more than we thought we should have, and actors decided that we probably paid less than we should have. But anyway, everyone was equally unhappy.
Perfect. The perfect transaction. The perfect transaction. Stephen Kark,
Exactly
good to
right.
catch up. Thank you for joining us this evening, Chief Executive at Paycorp. Fascinating tale of the evolution of a really interesting business. Stephen Kark joining us this evening as they've globalized a business with the base, the costs, the engine room still very much in South Africa.